Hello, and welcome to another educational video from Screams and Echoes. Forgotten pioneers of horror cinema. When we think of influential horror film directors, we may think of classic filmmakers like James Whale or Todd Browning, or more modern names like John Carpenter, Wes Craven, or George Romero. Current well-known names in the horror film universe include James Wan, Jordan Peele, and Karen Kusama. But for each of those popular masters of the genre, there are less familiar names that helped lift horror out of celluloid obscurity and into the spotlight. These are some of the lesser-known figures whose contributions have been crucial in shaping the modern horror film. Prior to his career in film, Benjamin Christensen started out as an opera singer and later turned to acting and directing in the Danish film industry. Christensen is best known for the 1922 Swedish-Danish film Häxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages, a silent horror documentary that traces the history of witchcraft from its ancient roots to later-day misunderstandings linked to mental illness. Christensen's innovative use of special effects and narrative style in depicting dark themes set a precedent in horror. Christensen also starred in the film as the Devil, showcasing his flair for dramatic and eerie presentations. Häxan was ahead of its time in terms of both thematic ambition and visual style, blending documentary-like narration with horror elements. After Häxan, Christensen moved to Hollywood, where he directed several films, though none as influential as Häxan. German actor and director Paul Wegener was intrigued by the potential of film as an artistic medium early in the history of cinema. Wegener is best remembered for his work on 3 films about the Jewish folklore figure, the Golem. 1915's The Golem, 1917's The Golem and the Dancing Girl, and 1920's The Golem, How He Came into the World. The films recount the legend of a clay figure brought to life to protect the Jews of Prague from persecution. Wegener's work on the Golem series helped establish key themes in the horror genre, particularly the trope of a creature created by man who turns against its creator. Wegener not only directed the film, but played the title creature as well. Wegener's portrayal of the Golem was both sympathetic and menacing, a balance that also influenced the portrayal of monsters in later horror films. Paul Wegener continued to act and direct in Germany, contributing to various film genres, until his death in 1948. Born in 1924 in Windsor, Colorado, Herc Harvey directed industrial and educational films for the Centron Corporation before making his feature film debut. Carnival of Souls from 1962 would wind up being Herc Harvey's only feature film, but it left a significant mark on the horror genre. The film's story follows a woman haunted by visions of a ghoulish figure after surviving a car accident. Harvey's use of eerie locations, including an abandoned amusement park, and his innovative sound design created a haunting, dreamlike atmosphere that has influenced many psychological horror films. Carnival of Souls was produced on a low budget and initially had a limited release, but it gradually gained a cult following. Although still largely unrecognized outside of cult film circles, it has been cited as an influence on later filmmakers, including George A. Romero and David Lynch. Oh, and like Benjamin Christensen and Paul Wegener, Herc Harvey not only directed the film, he also played the lead ghoul. Jean Yarbrough began his directing career in the 1930s, primarily working on low-budget films and serials. A lesser-known director whose contributions to the horror genre are often overlooked, he gained more recognition in the 1940s when he started directing for Universal Pictures. The Devil Bat from 1940 stars Bela Lugosi as a mad scientist who breeds oversized bats to carry out revenge against those who have wronged him. Although produced on a shoestring budget, the film became a hit, largely due to Lugosi's performance and Yarbrough's effective use of suspense and horror elements. 1946's House of Horrors is noted for its dark atmosphere and has become a cult classic. Featuring Rondo Hatton as a murderer known as the Creeper, the film's polarizing reception contributed to its popularity. Yarbrough's ability to work with limited resources to create a moody, engaging thriller was evident in this production. Beyond horror, John Yarbrough continued directing into the 1950s and 1960s, mostly in television, including popular shows like The Addams Family and Petticoat Junction. Jacques Tourneur was known for his subtle and suggestive approach to horror, relying more on shadows and sounds than on explicit horror, influencing the genre's direction towards psychological over physical terror. Born in Paris in 1904, Jacques Tourneur moved to Hollywood in the 1930s, where he directed several films for producer Val Lewton's low-budget horror unit at RKO Pictures. Cat People from 1942, about a woman who fears she turns into a panther when aroused, is known for its subtle, suggestive approach to horror, relying on shadows and sounds rather than overt displays of terror. I Walked with a Zombie from 1943 is a moody and atmospheric interpretation of a Jane Eyre-like story set in the Caribbean, blending elements of gothic horror with folklore. Tourneur called his technique of utilizing suggestive, moody shadows and sound less is more, often leaving much of the horror to the audience's imagination. It became a defining trait of Lewton's horror productions, creating a lasting impact on how to evoke fear without explicit violence or monsters. An aspect of horror films we still see today. Despite not being household names, these filmmakers each brought unique visions and techniques to the horror genre, significantly influencing how horror stories could be told on screen. Their work challenged the technical and narrative boundaries of their times and laid the groundwork for future innovations in horror filmmaking. For more insights into horror film history and controversies, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. For Screams and Echoes, I'm Luciana Forenza. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.